All right, guys, back again with another episode of Well Balanced. Having technical difficulties, so this is our second attempt. But today I'm talking with Kelsey, who's a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, and we're going to be talking all about birth control. So I'm super pumped because this is something I think every woman needs to hear about, and she is the expert in the field, so definitely want to rack her brain and get some insight into how to support these women. So hopefully, it might have been my internet, but we're gonna go with it. Let's see what.
We go. Okay.
Are
I
we
turned my
good?
Wi-Fi off. I think we've had some weird Wi-Fi issues happening lately, so I think it might have been me.
Okay. All right.
But
Hopefully it'll be good.
we'll get to the point. Keep it short and sweet.
Yeah.
So anyways, okay, so I was briefing about the conversation, so definitely want to talk about your expertise in this field. I think what you're doing is amazing, and every woman needs to hear about this, as I'm sure you're just like, bursting with passion about it. Um, But first and foremost, I want to do an introduction to you, just a little bit about, you and obviously your journey with what you are doing now and how you got into it and all that. So take it away.
Yeah. So I think you gave me a little spiel at the beginning, but I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, which is always such a mouthful when I say it like that. But
I was
over the
like, did I even say that right?
yeah. An NTP is just shorter. So you're very familiar with this, just going through school right now, which I'm so excited for you. But yeah, I've really just over the past couple of years kind of specialized into helping women just address the specific imbalances that birth control can cause in the body and just bringing those to the surface, whether they want to continue to stay on birth control or transition off. And it's really been, truthfully, I didn't think I was going to even go down this realm at all. When I graduated, I was like, oh, I'm going to focus on like gut health and these different things. But honestly, I just started working with a lot of one-on-one clients and realized how detrimental birth control can be if you're not supporting your body and kind of taking those steps to combat those imbalances that it caused. So the more and more clients I started to work with, I was like, okay, this is seeming to be a very common thing. And then started to share more about it on Instagram too. And I just felt like there was this massive influx of women reaching out like, oh my gosh, like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never heard this information before. So really since then, I've just kind of rolled with it, and it's been awesome being able to have so many different conversations about this. Like you said, I feel like I just want to like word vomit all the time
Mhm.
over this topic because it is, I feel like, so important, and it's just not a conversation that's being had with physicians and women when they are being put on birth control or just navigating kind of different options for their symptoms. So yeah, right now I'm just working with one-on-one clients to do that, and I have my birth control course as well. So really that's kind of the heartbeat of what I'm doing right now.
So you didn't do nutrition in like college, did you? Or was it something that you kind of fell into?
Yes, so I graduated as a child life specialist from college, so I was doing something completely different. So I was working in a children's hospital in Iowa. Quickly became pretty burnt out with that. I was working on an oncology floor, and it was a very fulfilling job, but at the same time, my husband or boyfriend at the time, now husband, was like, you're not very emotional. Like, you don't cry anymore. Like, I was kind of just turned into this zombie of a human. So long story short, I've always been interested in nutrition. I was an athlete growing up through college as well. So I was like, I need something that's a little bit lighter. So I actually started doing some beach body coaching. That was like my kickstart kind of into the
Okay.
nutrition world part-time while I was doing part-time at the hospital. And then the more I started to learn about that too, I'm like, I do not agree with what's going on. Like, this doesn't feel right. So then one of my close friends, Kate Crowell, she was an NTP, and everything that she was sharing and doing, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. So really, I just kind of took the leap and enrolled, graduated, and just have just kind of hit the ground running. So it's been awesome. I love everything about what I do now. So I'm so glad that I made the switch and where I'm at now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that you are in a niche that's very untouched, which I think, even for me, that's not going to be my focal point, but it's something that am so passionate about, and it's something that has to be a part of the healing process. It just has to be, you know. And I think, you know, we are so caught up in just going on this journey and doing this because we're told to do it, but we never just getting women to question, you know, what's going on, and, you know, empower them to feel confident to, you know, do what's best for them. And I think just the whole even the past 2 years has been kind of similar, you know. It's just like everyone has their own opinion on so many things related to health, but I think it's just like, if you are given the correct information, you should be able to make that choice on your own. So I think that's so awesome that you do that. So we'll dive right in then. So definitely, like, let's just start with the basics. So, you know, what are the main birth control methods that you work with / see the most, and kind of how those impact the body?
Yeah, so I would say the most common, so there's hormonal and non-hormonal types of birth control. Hormonal, the most common is probably the combination pill. You can also do like the mini pill where you're just getting synthetic forms of progesterone. So you're getting progestin. Hormonal IUDs are also really common. Mirena is probably the most common that I would see in the hormonal IUD world. And the non-hormonal is really just the Paragard, so the copper IUD as well. So those are kind of the most common forms. There are so many different variations and dosages of synthetic hormones that you can get in birth control. And I know a lot of women too have done a lot of like frog hopping around to find different forms of birth control that work for them, which I think is good if you're able to find that. But I also think that puts an additional stress on the body of just like this whirlwind of different types of hormones and dosages and everything like that. So yeah, those are the main, I would say, types. I would say the pill, combination pill, so you're getting both synthetic estrogen and progesterone, the Mirena, and then copper IUD are kind of the most common that I typically see.
Okay. And so like with the hormonal versus non-hormonal, what exactly is that difference? You know, most women, I'm sure, just doing it because they were told, but it just like, I feel like knowing how it actually works.
Yeah. So with, let's start with just the pill, for example. So again, you're getting both synthetic estrogen and progestin. That is completely shutting down ovulation. So most types of birth control, if you're getting synthetic hormones, that's going to be the case for you. So you are not ovulating whatsoever. So our typical cycle, obviously our hormones are going to be fluctuating quite a bit, rising during ovulation, dropping. I mean, it's a whole roller coaster of natural wonderment there. But if you're on the pill, that really suppresses all of that natural hormone production. So you're just getting a very kind of even keeled line of synthetic hormones throughout the month, or unless you're taking your kind of placebo week outside of that, but it's completely shutting down ovulation. With some other, I mean, with like the copper IUD, for example, so that's the non-hormonal form, which I think that is a pro of the copper IUD, is it's not shutting down ovulation. So ovulation is very important for our female health. So I think that aspect of it can be beneficial for some women. And I think that's the draw to, or it draws a lot of women to that. But unfortunately, it still affects our hormones in a roundabout way. So essentially that copper and that heavy exposure to the copper is very inflammatory locally, but it's also exposing our body on a day-to-day basis to copper, which is very heavy metal that we have to detox, and it can affect different mineral levels in the body that can impact our hormones and so many different things. So I think there's so many different pros and cons to the different types of birth control. And I think that's why it is good to kind of explore what's going to be best for you, because depending on your symptoms too, like for copper IUD, it's very common for women to experience heavy bleeds, painful cramps. I mean, it kind of exacerbates those symptoms. So if you're someone who already experiences that beforehand, would not recommend that for you at all. So it just kind of, it depends on the person, unfortunately, but because there are so many different options, but those are just kind of a couple of the distinguishing points between the two.
Okay, perfect. And then if you can just break down, I think, you know, just like the standard hormonal cycle that we should be having every single month, and kind of how that pill can kind of, like you kind of touched that a little bit, but just a little more detail for those listening.
Yeah. Yep. So normal cycle, we would go through 4 different phases ideally. So our menstrual phase, which we're all very familiar with when you're bleeding, then you move into your follicular phase. Energy starts to kind of bump up a little bit. Move into ovulation, which most of us, I would say, are also somewhat familiar or kind of familiar with that growing up. And then following ovulation, you move into luteal. So those are the 4 different phases. And like, I mean, you share about this all the time, and I feel like there's a lot more information coming up about just cycle syncing and being able to sync up to those fluctuations in regards to your diet or your workouts, and even just like lifestyle stuff and habits that you're doing, or like social settings. I think once you're able to really understand those 4 different phases and acknowledge that, like, okay, my hormones are lower during this phase, it's okay for me to turn inward a little bit and like say no to certain social obligations and just go for a walk instead of like pushing yourself like crazy doing HIIT. It really does wonders for just your hormonal health in general, and just mental health and physical health. I mean, all of those different things. So that's kind of the spiel as far as what a natural cycle should look like. But again, if you're on any type of birth control that has any type of synthetic hormone, so regardless if you're getting a combination dose or just progestin, that's going to suppress those hormones, because your body it just kind of tricks your body into thinking like, okay, I'm getting these doses of hormones that don't act the same as our natural hormones by any means, so our body isn't going to produce them. So then this just causes like a whole underlying imbalance of natural hormones while you're on birth control. So this is why I see too, when women come off, it's just kind of, if you're not kind of doing those things to support that and try to combat those imbalances a little bit, it can be really just like a shell shock of okay, here we're left with really high estrogen or really low progesterone, or kind of whatever it is, depending on the type of birth control they were on. But you're just not able to sync up to any type of natural hormone fluctuations or any of those phases, unfortunately, if you're on hormonal birth control.
Yeah, it's crazy to think like I didn't even know that, and it's the changes. I mean, I was only on birth control for about 6 months. I went on after college to clear my acne. Didn't do that. It did the complete opposite, like gained weight, broke out. It was horrible. My moods were terrible. And I just always had an inkling to like not put that in my body. And I'm grateful for that now. But, at the time it was like, oh, everyone's doing it. This must be the solution. And maybe I just got the wrong one or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the hormone, it was like, then finally starting to learn more about the hormonal shifts, and just kind of like, even for me, having trained in Orange Theory, I was mentioning that on my post about syncing your workouts. Never knew that. And it's like crazy how, these like women, I think, tend to go towards HIIT because HIIT it's total body. It's the quickest way to weight loss and gaining strength and all this other stuff, but it can be so detrimental to your hormones. And I just never knew that. And I was getting sick so often, and it was just crazy. So it's so interesting to see, you and other accounts posting about the importance of those fluctuations and the importance of, an excuse to say no to things, and really unwinding and appreciating your body for what it's supposed to be doing. And I think it's so cool that we're finally educating women towards that, versus like, doing the same things every month and having the same functionality as men would. And that's just like,
Right.
not our purpose.
Yeah,
So,
no, that's
so
a
cool.
huge piece of it, is just like not having to mirror everything that men are doing as far as just, I mean, diet or exercise when it comes to either. We are such different beings on a physiological level. So I love, like you said, the fact that at least I feel like it's becoming a little bit more like common knowledge now, and people are talking about it more, that we are very different, and we just have to acknowledge that in everything that we're doing. So I think it is really cool. And I think too, with just like birth control in general, and thinking about it as really just affecting your hormones, I really like to remind clients, and just when having conversations with people on Instagram, that nothing in our body, as far as like our organs and our organ systems, are just this single pillar that's working only within itself. Our body works, everything works together so synergistically. So Of course, if we're suppressing a very, very natural function in our body as far as ovulation goes, that's absolutely going to affect so many different kind of like secondary areas. So you really do have to think about it from a whole body sense, and not just these like singular issues that you're trying to address with birth control or whatever it may be. Because I think that's, I mean, growing up too, I always had that mindset. I never really understood the connection between everything as far as like digestion and liver health and blood sugar. And it's all connected. So you do have to take that kind of all encompassing approach. But also when you are having these conversations about birth control, and it frustrates me that just the conversations that are had too in the doctor's office, that they just totally brush off like, oh, absolutely. Like your anxiety is, there's no way that's related to your birth control or your IBS diagnosis or like all of these secondary things. I'm like, how can you say that? So that's really frustrating too, because I feel like a lot of women are just getting brushed, or whatever symptom they're dealing with is totally just getting brushed under the rug. And then they're left at ground zero again. Like, okay, well, I have no idea what this could be from. But you do just have to acknowledge that everything does work together so closely. So if one thing is being affected or it's causing some imbalance in the body, that's going to cascade in other areas too.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I mean, I didn't, before going through the nutritional therapy program, it's like you're like, oh, the liver, pancreas, they're
Right.
doing their thing. Like they're not worried about each other, but it's crazy to think their connection. And I think people are so zoned in, even especially like with gut health, they're like, I want to heal my gut. And it's like, well, there's so many other things that go into play there that are, part of the process. So I think that's what drew me to the program for sure. And that's what I love about how we are all healing people in the holistic sense, because I think, you have to learn the foundations, and no matter where you are in your life, there's always going to be something that you can go back to and support your body in a good way. So,
no, absolutely.
So on that note, with like just supporting people with this, whether they're on birth control, wanting to come off, or whether they are currently or recently off of it, I'm sure the approach is very similar, because that bodily support has to be, the same, obviously, with the hormonal fluctuations in play or not. But can you touch on like some things that you typically, request or encourage people to try to do in terms of like balancing that, whether they're on it or not?
Yes, there's definitely a few. I mean, I pull from the foundations a lot through the NTP program, because it does all come back to that. So I focus a lot on, especially my course, like different pillars that, regardless of if you are on birth control, if you are transitioning off, if you have been off for years at a time, even, you have to address these pillars in order to achieve any type of hormonal imbalance or hormonal balance in general. So a few of those, digestion is definitely one of them. So with birth control, and I'll just kind of go off of the pill right now. There can be some variations with IUDs and copper IUD, but a lot of them do really mirror pretty closely and kind of overlap. But the pill has been known to alter our gut microbiome. So it's kind of like a antibiotic in a sense for most women, where it does kill off a lot of that good bacteria. So we're left with that dysbiotic imbalance in our gut, which can cause a lot of different issues. It can also contribute to leaky gut. So with just that elevated level of estrogen exposure, that's going to cause a lot of inflammation, which can lead to leaky gut. So this is why it is so common that women do experience or just find themselves in a place where they're being told they have IBS or SIBO or chronic constipation, or just all of these different digestive conditions after being on birth control. And to me, I'm like, that's no coincidence whatsoever. But again, to doctors, they're like, not even close, that would be a connection. But those are a couple of the big areas that I do like to hit. So really just replenishing that good bacteria, making sure that you're getting probiotic rich foods in, taking a high quality probiotic supplement if that is what you prefer to do, and really working on just trying to rebuild that gut lining is very important. Leaky gut, I feel like, is one of the most common underlying just reasons behind so many different. Yeah, I mean, just so many.
In some capacity.
Yeah, It's like, do you have acne? Leaky gut. Do you have anxiety? Leaky gut. It's just autoimmune conditions. Like it all comes back to that. So really just working on replenishing that aspect of the gut is really important. Liver health is huge when you are on birth control and coming off. As you know, our liver does so much for us on a daily basis. It really is a big detox organ. It filters through a lot of those excess toxins and chemicals and different things that we're just exposed to on a daily basis. But then adding synthetic hormones on top of that, or even the copper exposure from copper IUDs, that just puts a huge burden or an added burden on the liver. So that often can affect just even like our bile consistency and how that is all being a kind of regulated in the body. So making sure that, I mean, throwing in some dandelion root tea is great, or beets, high quality proteins, castor oil packs, all of those things are going to be helpful to make sure that even if you're staying on birth control, that at least you're supporting in some way those detox pathways to try to efficiently just get rid of some of those excess hormones so they're not recirculating in your body constantly. So the liver is a huge one. We touch on blood sugar a lot. Blood sugar is just important for everybody in general. And let's see, nutrient replenishment is huge as well. So birth control is known to deplete certain nutrients in our body, and a wide variety of them that are very important. So this is a huge piece as well. Again, if you're on birth control or coming off, really trying to eat a nutrient dense diet. If you can, getting organic produce and pasture raised meats and all those foods that don't have a label on them and are going to be packed full of those good vitamins and minerals that are being actively depleted. And something I like to do for that and recommend is those beef liver capsules. So do you take those, right?
Yeah, and I got my hair cut like last week, and my hairdresser was like, "Your hair's grown so much." I was like, "It's these beef liver supplements, I'm telling you." And then the
Yeah,
collagen
they're
too.
wonderful.
I was like, "Goodness, yeah, no, they're great."
They are.
Awesome.
So that's an easy recommendation. Obviously, like, you want to focus on food first and try to just incorporate those nutrients into your diet. But the beef liver capsules are wonderful, just to give you that bioavailable
And I never even
form.
thought for a second about a beef liver. I was like, "What is this?" And then,
Yeah.
multivitamin is always the way to go, but never knew the quality that mattered, never knew how they all worked like with your diet and everything. So super important. And I think having a quality one like that is it's just so easy to incorporate in your diet, knowing that you're getting all that right away.
Right. Yeah. It's so convenient. I love taking the capsules because I've tried liver before and it's okay. Like, if you cook it the right way, but it still tastes a little like
I don't think
irony or bloody. So I think a lot of people probably feel the same way. So yeah, I would definitely recommend like a beef liver supplement, trace minerals, different things like that, just to kind of have that backup. But the nutrient replenishment is huge. Thyroid too, it just can, like, again, cascade into so many different areas. So it's hard, but I would definitely say the liver support, supporting digestion, supporting those nutrient levels is really, really key. And then also just kind of supporting cortisol too in our adrenal health, because anytime we're on birth control, whether it's a pill form where you're getting those synthetic hormones or something like a copper IUD, it's a stressor on the body, and it's kind of hard to avoid that. So the inflammation is going to be high, regardless of what type you're on, which is going to increase cortisol, which can essentially like shut off and deprioritize a lot of other functions in the body. So just working on that as well, and just kind of like stress management type stuff or whatever you have to do. But the adrenal cocktail is a wonderful thing to incorporate.
Love that.
Yes, it's so good too. I'm like, I've never had a single client either that doesn't like it. They all try it and they're like,
I
oh my
know.
gosh. I'm like,
And there's so many ways you can do it. Like, you can totally make it your own, but I love it. It's so great.
Yeah. It's a nice little pick-me-up treat. So yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I think that's important too. And I try to have that conversation as well, because I know there are some women that want to stay on birth control and that's the easiest thing for them right now. That's their priority, which is totally fine. But just having those conversations to introduce different ways of supporting those imbalances while you're on it, just to make those imbalances, I guess, less severe
Right.
until you want to come off.
So in a case like that, if you were wanting to stay on it for a little while longer, is there a timeline that you recommend people to start supporting their body, you know, before they transition off, or should they just cut cold turkey?
I don't recommend cold turkey. I have had clients do it, and I mean, it's okay. But I think if you're able to, and everybody's timeline is kind of different as far as if you're wanting to come off and, you know, try to have kids right away or whatever it is. But if you can, I would really try to allot at least like 2 to 3 months of implementing some type of protocol that's going to address, again, a lot of these imbalances that we've talked about, just so that transition is a little bit smoother. A lot of times, I mean, students working through like the birth control course, if they're able to implement, even some of them for like a month, and they're able to implement the protocols kind of word by word, and they're really good about getting that into their routine. I mean, I'll get emails all the time like, I got my period back after the first month and it wasn't that bad, and I just had a few cramps, and it was very smooth compared to kind of what they were anticipating. So I do recommend, if you can, to really try to backload that support as quickly as possible, so then when you do come off, it's not as intense, because it's a huge shift, especially for women who have been on birth control for 10, 15, I mean, even like 20 years sometimes.
Right.
That's a really long time for basically your brain, your ovaries to not be communicating. So it's going to take time for things to regulate for sure, but there are definitely ways that you can work on supporting it prior to coming off.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think I've had conversations with just friends and people, and you know, they've been like, "Oh yeah, I want to come off right away," and I'm like, "No, I wouldn't recommend that. You know, just take it easy." The goal. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that is your end goal. That I support that 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we got to do it properly, because your body will thank you for that. Okay,
Yes,
so
exactly.
you were like delayed. I was like, wait, did you hear me?
No.
Okay, so I want to end with two things. One is, what are like the top 3 or 4 myths that you hear about birth control, in terms of, you know, things like, oh, it balances my hormones, and it actually doesn't. Things like that, which I'm sure you can have a field day on. And then also, any resources that you recommend for anyone listening who, you know, may not be able to invest in working with a practitioner themselves, but really want to learn more about their body and just the pill in general.
Yeah. So myths. Okay. Yeah. The balancing hormones one, that drives me so crazy. And I hear that so much. Like, still, I just hear so many people say that. But yes, if your doctor is telling you that your birth control will balance your hormones, it is so ass backwards, pardon my language. But I mean, as we talked about in the beginning, it is literally shutting off all of your natural hormonal production. So there is no way that it is going to help balance anything out. It's just temporarily shutting them off, kind of putting a band-aid on whatever symptom you are trying to address. And then when you do come off, it's more of you're going to be left with even more of an imbalance than when you probably started birth control. So that's a really big one. So please run for the hills, or please find another doctor if they continue to say that. Let's see. Another big one is like if you're on the pill and you're getting a period, that's a true period. I think a lot of doctors find or tell their patients that, thinking that that's going to be validating, like, okay, I'm still getting a period, like everything's not completely thrown off, but that's really just a withdrawal bleed from the synthetic hormone. So you're still not ovulating what you have to ovulate in order to get a true period. So that's a really big misconception that I feel like I'm still having with so many clients down the road.
And is that the same experience on the copper IUD, considering that one technically doesn't? Like, what's the situation there?
Yeah, so that's different. So that's a good point. So with the copper IUD, you can still ovulate. So you are still getting a period. So that, if you're on the copper IUD and getting a period, that is a true period. But if you're on, I mean, the pills specifically, that is suppressing ovulation, shutting that off. So you're not going to be getting one. Some women can still ovulate depending on the type of like hormonal IUD that they're on, depending on the dosage of progestin or whatnot, but it's very common for them still not to be ovulating. So the pill bleed is a definite myth. Let's see, what are some other ones? I have so many listed in my course because I'm like, I just want to put them out right away because I know that they're so common.
Well, and I feel like you put a post up recently that was like, the majority of women don't go on birth control to, avoid pregnancy. Like they do, some of
Yeah.
them, and that's obviously the intention, I think, but it's mostly to regulate hormones or acne or, whatever it is. And it's like, it's never going to do that. And so I
Right.
think it's
Yeah, I mean, the symptom control
crazy.
is so common. And that's, I mean, just a huge myth in general. Like if you are being put on for acne or, heavy periods or irregular periods or whatever it is, just remember that it's not addressing the root cause of why your acne was there, or why your periods are so heavy. It's just, again, we're turning off those natural hormone productions. And then we're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it until you come off. So your symptoms might improve, which again, if that's your priority and like, that's what you need to do at the moment, by all means. But just know that when you come off, it's very common for women to experience the exact same symptoms that they did prior, or like why they went on birth control in the first place, because that whole time, nothing was truly getting addressed at the root level. It was just,
Right.
it just had a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah. No, I can't. I mean, any other top myths you can think of off the top of your head? Trying to think of any.
Gosh.
I would say that
Those are the big ones. I feel like those are like the
two.
all-encompassing ones, and then there's like smaller myths under each one as I'm hearing more conversations between physicians and clients that I have. But those are the big ones. I would feel like that are the most common.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well then, any resources that you want to leave people with that aren't from you, like whether it's books or podcasts or things like that, and then also to finish, just to share how people can, get involved with what you have to offer, all the things that you have to offer, and yeah.
Yeah. Some books. Jolene Brighton's an awesome resource for just like hormones in general. She has a book called Beyond the Pill that it can be really helpful for just, again, kind of talking through some of those imbalances that it can cause, and giving you a lot of those natural remedies to try to combat those. So she's awesome. And all of their like Instagram accounts too are great. I feel like I'm always on Instagram when it comes to that and following new people. Lisa Henderson Jack is really great. She talks a little bit more about like fertility awareness method, in that sense. So if you're wanting to learn more about how to use that, maybe post-birth control, that can be really helpful. Nina Boyce is another great resource. She's a fertility awareness educator, but she has a great podcast called Healing Hormones with a lot of amazing guests that come on and talk through this. Gosh, I could just like send you a ton when I'm off. I'm so bad at like coming up with like, books and people on the spot, but
I read Taking Charge of Your Fertility at first, which is a
great
little more scientific, but it's definitely extremely thorough, and it tells you a lot about the FAM method, which I think is definitely new to a lot of women. So I think that was really empowering.
Yeah, that one's like a textbook, so be prepared if you get that one.
Yeah, I know some chapters are harder than others, but it's really worth it.
Yeah,
I did.
In the
just
Flow
finish
is a great book.
Yep.
But that's more so kind of with phases. Sorry, what?
The fifth vital sign, isn't that one?
That's a great one.
Yeah. Okay. So tons of resources out there, and I know we've talked about Hormone Healing RD. She's great on a podcast. So lots of resources for those listening who can, start educating yourself. I think it's so awesome that these conversations are happening just anywhere, and that you're able to get some resources, but then like have additional support in, the liver and gut and all those deeper areas that a lot of people struggle with, working with somebody. So, so on that note, how can someone work with you? Where can they find you? What do you have to offer?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram. I feel like that's my only platform that I put too much energy into. So Buns and Balance is my Instagram. And then I work one-on-one with clients. So if you go to my website, you can fill out a nutritional therapy application there. I do have a little bit of a wait list with that, but it's an option to kind of work together. I also, for one-on-one services, that it's not as intensive, but I offer a breaking balance service that allows me to look strictly at like a week of your food journal, and kind of assess if there's any areas of blood sugar that we can address, or digestive health, sleep, energy, things like that. So that's something that I have ongoing. I don't have any wait lists for that. So it's a good starting place for people to begin, just if they want some of those tips. I kind of do an intake form at the beginning, just gauging what your top goals are, your top symptoms that you're trying to work on. So if you are on birth control, let me know there, and I can give you some more kind of targeted advice there. And then I have my birth control bounce back course, which just launched, I don't even know what month it is right now.
March.
It's March,
Yeah.
The end of March.
Which
Yep,
I
so
just signed up for, and I'm super
Yeah.
pumped about it. I haven't done it yet because I haven't had time, but cannot wait to learn more about everything so I can help, expand this knowledge more. But
Yes.
but yeah, I'm so excited to learn from you, and I can't wait to see what you've done with it.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited to have you in, and just spread all of the knowledge. And once you graduate, you can just run away with it. So yeah, I have that'll launch every quarter. So probably late summer, that will launch again for those of you that are interested in that. And then really the other one, I have a PMS crash course that's really just like a downloadable resource that walks you through all of the main PMS symptoms that you're experiencing, why those are happening, and specific like steps and protocols to help address that as well. So that's targeted more for clients or women that are not on birth control, just because, again, you can't really sync up to a lot of the information that's in there if you're getting those synthetic hormones. So I try to hit every kind of type of menstruator or someone who's dealing with hormonal stuff in some way or the other. But those are my top services right now, ways to connect.
No, I think that's awesome. Having variety of methods, learning, I think everyone learns differently too. So I think it's cool that, from the ebooks to the courses to the one-on-one, and price ranges. I know that investing in health can be intimidating for people with how expensive it is. So just knowing that there's options, I think is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it was a joy having you. I appreciate you coming on and chatting. I know we could talk so much longer about so many things, but I hope we'll stay in touch for sure, and definitely check out her page. I'll tag Buns in the caption as well and share it to my feed so you guys can see it. But yeah, I hope you have a great day, and thanks for being on an episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love these series that you do. I was just talking to my friend about it this morning. I feel like you pull such a good variety of different practitioners and just topics and stuff. So it's always so interesting to see who you're chatting with. So keep it up. You're doing great.
Yeah, I need to
been so fun chatting about it.
The second half of the year. So if you have any recommendations on other accounts, let me know.
Yeah, I'll send them your way.
But awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day, and
thank you.
Stay warm out there.
Yes, you too. Enjoy the 80-degree weather this weekend. That sounds magical.
I know. I'm going to get my tan on. We'll see how that goes.
Yes.
Bye, girl. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you later.